The Valarans had lived in the Trisolaris system for thousands of years. Their cities floated among the greenish clouds of their home planet, built from a shining crystal that reflected the light of their twin suns. Peace had always been their way of life. They were a gentle species, careful, intelligent, and curious. War in their minds was a concept of the past, something their ancestors had faced long ago. But now that peaceful existence was under threat. It started quietly. The outer scanning arrays first detected strange ships on the edge of their system. At first, the Valaran scientists thought it was a minor exploration mission. Valarans had always been aware of other civilizations, but most had been friendly or indifferent. These ships, however, moved with precision and purpose. Their shapes were jagged, irregular, and frightening. They did not respond to communication attempts. Within days, the invaders had reached the first Valaran colonies. The ships unleashed strange beams that disintegrated buildings, forests, and everything in between. Valarans had no weapons capable of stopping them. Their defensive drones were laughably small and slow compared to the Predator ships. Panic spread across the planet. Families hid in caves or among the clouds, hoping the invaders would move on. The Valaran Council convened in an emergency meeting. Leaders from every major city gathered in the central crystal dome, a place usually reserved for celebration and learning. Now it was filled with fear, worry, and tension. "This is unlike anything we have ever faced," said High Counselor Zirella, her voice trembling slightly. "Our defenses are useless, our drones cannot harm them, and our shields are not enough to hold. We need outside help." "But to whom do we reach?" asked Elder Terran, a soft-spoken historian who had witnessed many centuries. "Most of the known civilizations are too far, and the Galactic Council is slow to respond. By the time they act, we may be gone." Silence fell across the chamber. Then, a young scientist, Lyran, stepped forward. "There is one possibility," she said, her tone cautious but determined. "We can send a distress signal beyond our sector, a SOS, a call for aid to any species that might hear it. It is risky, but it is our only chance." The council debated late into the Trisolarian night. Some feared that contacting unknown species could invite even more danger. Others believed they had no choice. The invaders were not slowing down, and entire cities were being destroyed. Finally, with heavy hearts, they agreed. The SOS would be sent. Lyran and her team worked tirelessly. They encoded the signal with Velaran language, star maps, and information about their enemies. They added coordinates, population data, and a request for help. But they also made a mistake that would change everything. In their urgency, they broadcast the signal in all directions, without filtering for known friendly civilizations. It was a wide net, reaching beyond the Galactic Council, beyond the usual communication lanes. Somewhere in the deep dark reaches of space it would find someone or something. Meanwhile, the invaders advanced. Their ships tore through the outer defenses, leaving Velaran drones shattered and inactive. The skies were filled with black, smoke, fire, and the screams of panicked citizens. Families clutched each other in terror as the alien ships descended. Lyran watched the chaos from the top of the central dome. Her normally calm hands shook as she adjusted the transmission. "Please," she whispered, "someone, anyone hear us?" Far beyond Trisolaris, in an uncharted region of space, the SOS signal drifted silently through the void. It passed by empty star systems, asteroids, and drifting debris. Then, unexpectedly, it entered the sensors of a human warship, the lead ship of Earth's Deathworlder fleet. Humans had long been considered unpredictable, even dangerous by other civilizations. The Deathworlder fleet was a secret project, designed to operate in the harshest, deadliest regions of space. Their ships were massive, heavily armored, and armed with experimental weapons capable of extreme destruction. The fleet's primary purpose was to respond to any threat, no matter how dangerous, and ensure survival against impossible odds. Captain Marcus Vey, commander of the flagship Indomitable, was in his command chamber when the alert appeared. His brow furrowed as he read the strange signal, noting its origin from an unknown star system. "This is unusual," he said to his officers. They're asking for help, but there's no indication of the threat. Coordinates only. And no standard language code. Lyran, can you decode it? Lyran, the ship's communications officer, frowned. It's primitive, sir. Not any known civilization protocol. But the distress is clear. Whatever they are facing, it is serious. They're asking for immediate assistance. Marcus studied the readings. We don't know who they are or what we'll face. But that doesn't matter. They sent an SOS, that's enough. Prepare the fleet for immediate warp jump. We respond to all calls for help, no exceptions. In the Valaran system, the first full day of chaos passed. Entire cities were leveled, fires raged in the crystal forests, and the sky glowed a sickly red from the invaders' weapons. Children and elders were carried to hidden shelters, while the Valaran militia, armed only with small energy rifles, tried to hold off the attackers. Lyran returned to the council chamber, her face pale but determined. The SOS is sent. Now we can only wait. Hours later, sensors picked up strange readings on the edge of the system. At first, the Valarans thought it was more invader ships, but the readings were different, larger, heavier, and unlike anything they had ever seen. What is that? Asked Elder Terran, pointing to the display. High Counselor Sorella stepped forward, her eyes wide. It's huge and approaching fast. The first Deathworlder ships emerged from warp space, massive as mountains in orbit. Their hulls were dark, covered with strange geometries and glinting armor. Turrets and weapons bristled across the decks. The Valarans had never seen anything like it. The sky was filled with vessels that dwarfed even the invaders' largest ships. The invader fleet noticed immediately. Their formation faltered. Their sensors were picking up a presence they could not recognize or easily attack. Lyran's heart raced. I think they've heard our SOS, she whispered, but are they here to help us? The answer became clear in moments. The Deathworlders did not send messages of peace. They did not slow their approach. Their ships aligned, weapons, systems online, ready for war. The invaders, sensing the sheer power of this incoming fleet, began to retreat, firing wildly but ineffectively. The Valarans watched in awe and fear. Their SOS had not gone to the Galactic Council. It had gone to something far more powerful, something they did not understand. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Marcus Vey observed the Valaran cities burning below. He made his decision calmly. Target the invader fleet. We neutralize them. Protect the civilians if possible, but don't hesitate. They sent the call for help and we deliver. And with that, the Deathworlder fleet moved into action, their engines flaring, their weapons systems primed, and their presence shaking the Valaran system to its core. The Valarans had asked for help, but they had no idea the kind of help they were about to receive. The first part of their story, the SOS and the arrival of the Deathworlders, ended with the universe's quiet, terrifying truth. Sometimes, asking for help brings far more than you expect. The Valaran sky burned red with the light of the invaders' weapons. Buildings collapsed, fires spread, and the cries of the frightened population echoed through the crystal cities. The Valarans had fought with courage, but their small defense, drones and energy rifles, were no match for the relentless attackers. It seemed as though all hope was lost. Then, like dark shadows moving across the stars, the Deathworlder fleet appeared. Hundreds of massive ships emerged from warp space, their dark hulls reflecting the dying light of the Valaran suns. Their engines flared like blazing comets, and their weapon systems hummed with a low, threatening resonance. Each vessel was larger than anything the Valarans had ever imagined, and together they formed an armada that could dominate an entire system. High Counselor Sorella and Elder Terran watched from the central dome, their mouths open in awe and fear. They are enormous, Sorella whispered. What kind of species is this? Lyran, standing beside them, shook her head. I don't know. Their technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. They must be the ones who received our SOS. But are they here to help us or to attack? From orbit, Captain Marcus Vey observed the Valaran cities burning below. His eyes were calm, precise, as if calculating every possible outcome at once. "We neutralized the invader fleet," he said. "The civilians are secondary. Our priority is the threat. They sent the call for help, and that is our order." The Deathworlder ships moved in perfect coordination. Their weapons targeted the invaders with astonishing accuracy. Energy beams and missile arrays tore through the enemy vessels, which tried desperately to evade. Every attempt to escape or fight back failed. The invaders' ships were powerful, but the Deathworlders' firepower was overwhelming. In the skies above the Valaran capital, the invaders unleashed their deadliest weapon, a massive plasma cannon that could destroy entire districts. The Deathworlder fleet responded instantly. A human warship fired a pulse of gravity manipulation, causing the plasma blast to veer off course and explode harmlessly in empty space. Another vessel used a nanobot swarm to dismantle the invaders' weapon systems from a distance. The Valarans could hardly believe their eyes. These humans did not fight like any species they knew. They adapted, reacted, and used their environment in ways that seemed impossible. Mountains were pushed to create barriers. Asteroids were redirected into the path of enemy ships. Every action was precise, deadly, and effective. On the ground, the Valarans could see the effects of the battle. The invaders' smaller ships were obliterated. Larger vessels were crippled and forced to retreat. Smoke from the destroyed warships filled the upper atmosphere, and streaks of light from human weapons painted the sky. Lyran felt a mixture of relief and fear. "They are saving us," she said softly. "But they are terrifying." Elder Terran nodded. "Yes, they are nothing like us. They survive where we cannot. They fight where we would run. We asked for help, and this is what arrived." The invaders tried to regroup, sending swarms of smaller attack craft toward the human fleet. But the Deathworlders anticipated each movement. Automated turrets and advanced tracking systems targeted every incoming vessel. With each strike, invader ships were shredded or disabled. It was a display of strategy, efficiency, and raw power that the Valarans had never witnessed. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus observed the battlefield through a panoramic display. He spoke calmly to his officers, giving precise commands that coordinated hundreds of ships in a perfect dance of destruction. "Divide the swarm into 2 groups," he said. "Flank them from the left while the main fleet holds the center. Prepare the gravity disruptors for deployment on the larger ships. We do not leave any threat standing." The Valarans watched as the humans moved like a living organism. Their ships twisted, turned, and struck with perfect timing. The invaders' leaders began to panic. Messages of retreat and surrender were ignored by their crews as the Deathworlders' attacks left no room for hesitation. From a hidden observation point, a Valaran family watched in awe. Young children clutched each other tightly, wide-eyed. "Are they gods?" one whispered. "No," Lyran said firmly, though her voice trembled. "They are humans, and they are unlike anything we have ever known." As the battle continued, the Deathworlders' ingenuity became even clearer. One group of ships created a temporary wormhole near a cluster of invader ships, pulling them into a trap. Another group used magnetized asteroid fragments to smash enemy vessels without ever firing a weapon. The invaders' attacks became desperate, uncoordinated, and ultimately futile. High above the Valaran capital, a massive invader warship attempted to break through the human line. Its weapons fired continuously, and it moved with frightening speed. The Valarans held their breath as beams of energy struck human ships, but the fleet adjusted immediately. Shield generators pulsed, and countermeasures deployed. Within minutes, the massive warship was crippled, spinning helplessly before being destroyed by a combination of human energy pulses and tactical strikes. The Valarans were stunned. They can survive anything," Sorella said, her voice barely audible. "Every attack, every weapon, and nothing can stop them," Lyran added. "And they do not hesitate. They act with purpose. Every movement is calculated, every strike deadly." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Marcus received a report from one of his lieutenants. "Sir, the invader fleet is collapsing. Resistance is minimal. Civilians are largely safe in their shelters. Casualties among our forces are negligible. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. Good. Begin cleanup operations. Neutralize any remaining pockets of resistance. Once the system is secure, we leave. They did not request our presence longer than necessary. The Valarans began to realize the true scale of the human power before them. These were not merely warriors. They were survival experts, engineers, and tacticians in a single form. They adapted to every challenge instantly and responded with devastating precision. Yet the humans did not linger to claim territory or demand obedience. Once the invaders were neutralized, the fleet held a defensive perimeter, while civilians emerged cautiously from their shelters. Children ran into the open, staring up at the enormous ships that had saved them. Elderly Valarans knelt in gratitude, while Lyran tried to find words to express their awe. They are more than we imagined, she whispered. They are not like anyone else in the galaxy. They are unstoppable. Captain Marcus, observing the Velaran population, saw their fear and awe. Caution, he instructed his officers. They sent the call. We helped. That is all. No further interference, remember. We are here to survive and protect, not to control. The Valarans slowly approached the humans' defensive perimeter. Small shuttles and drones moved to inspect the massive fleet. They were cautious but curious, fascinated by the dark, glinting hulls and advanced weaponry. High Counselor Cirella finally spoke. We cannot thank you enough, she said, her voice shaking. Our species would have been lost without you. Marcus nodded politely but remained firm. Your SOS was received. You needed help. That is what we do. Lyran could not hide her astonishment. Your species, you are different. You fight, survive, and endure. Unlike anything we have known. You thrive in chaos. A human officer standing beside Marcus smiled faintly. We do not fear danger. We adapt. That is the human way. The Velarans observed the humans with a mixture of awe and fear. They had requested help, and now they understood the true cost and scale of what that meant. These were not diplomats. These were survivalists, warriors, and masters of war. Their arrival had saved the Velaran system, but it had also opened the door to a species that could not be ignored, a force unlike any the galaxy had seen. As the last of the invader ships were destroyed, the human fleet began to slowly regroup. Their engines glowed softly, and their ships formed a perfect formation around the system. No Valaran dared approach too closely, yet everyone could feel the presence of the humans like a weight in the sky, strong, silent, and unyielding. For the Valarans, it was a night of relief and wonder. They had survived, yes, but they had survived because of a species that was terrifying, unstoppable, and utterly extraordinary. And somewhere deep in space, far beyond the Valaran system, other civilizations would one day hear the tale of the humans, the Deathworlders, who arrived without warning and turned hopelessness into victory. The first battle was over, but the legend of the Deathworlder fleet had just begun. The Valaran system had never been so quiet. The fires of the invaders' assault still burned in scattered regions, but the Deathworlder fleet had cleared the skies of active threats. For the first time in weeks, the Valarans dared to step outside their shelters. Lyran and Elder Terran walked among the streets of the capital city, surveying the damage. Buildings were shattered, crystal towers toppled, and the smoke of destroyed warships drifted high into the atmosphere. The Valarans had survived, but at a heavy cost. Yet even in the devastation, there was a glimmer of hope. Above them, the human fleet remained in orbit, a silent wall of dark metal, bristling with weaponry. They are remarkable, Lyran said quietly, her eyes scanning the massive ships. We saw them fight. We saw their power. But seeing them up close, it is frightening. Elder Terran nodded. They do not act like any other species. They do not fear death. They do not hesitate. And they adapt faster than anything I have ever known. Meanwhile, Captain Marcus Vey oversaw the fleet from the bridge of the Indomitable. Reports continued to stream in from patrol drones and reconnaissance teams. Though the invader fleet had been defeated, small pockets of enemy forces had retreated to hidden asteroids and distant moons. "Prepare the strike teams," Marcus ordered. "We cannot leave any threats alive. Civilians are safe now. Focus on the remaining invaders. No mistakes." Human shuttles deployed in precise formations, moving toward enemy hideouts with silent efficiency. Each strike team operated independently, yet the coordination between them was flawless. Valarans watching from below could see energy beams slice through rocky asteroids, vaporizing the last of the enemy's hidden ships. Lyran's hands shook as she observed. They are not just warriors. They are engineers, tacticians, and hunters all at once. Every move, perfect. On one of the moons, a group of invader forces attempted a desperate ambush. They launched a series of plasma mines and swift attack, ships hoping to trap the humans. But the Deathworlders were ready. Gravity disruptors lifted the mines into orbit, spinning them harmlessly away, while drone swarms intercepted the smaller ships before they could reach the human vessels. Back, in the capital, Velaran children pointed to the sky, their mouths open in wonder. "They are invincible," one whispered. Lyran shook her head. "No, they are human. But they survive and fight like nothing we have ever imagined. They turn chaos into advantage." The battle intensified when the invaders attempted to regroup near the gas giant at the edge of the system. They formed a defensive line, hoping that the Deathworlders would hesitate to engage in the planet's thick atmosphere. But hesitation was not part of the human approach. Captain Marcus studied the readings on his display. The gas giant's gravity is stronger than expected. Adjust vector for fleet. Split into 3 formations. Main attack on left flank. Secondary attack on right. Reserve units hold the center. The human fleet moved as one organism. Ships twisted and turned, deploying weapons in perfect sequence. Valarans could see massive energy beams strike the invaders, slicing ships apart mid-flight. The humans used the gas giant's gravity to their advantage, slingshotting attack drones into enemy formations. Asteroids were redirected to crush invader cruisers. Every move seemed impossible, yet completely effective. High above the planet, a single massive invader warship attempted to escape the human assault. Its engines flared with desperation as it fired continuous energy beams, trying to break the human lines. But the Deathworlders anticipated it. A human vessel launched a swarm of magnetized drones that attached to the invader's hull, tearing through armor while remaining completely untouchable. Another human ship fired a pulse of gravity energy that bent the warship's trajectory, slamming it into a nearby asteroid field. In moments, the massive ship was disabled and left drifting, powerless. Lyran gasped. How do they do this? Nothing should survive their attacks, yet they control everything. The battlefield is theirs. Elder Terran's eyes were wide. It is not just strength or weapons. It is intelligence, strategy, and fearlessness. They see possibilities we cannot even imagine. The invaders began a full retreat, scattering in all directions. Their formations were shattered, their morale broken. The Deathworlder fleet pursued them methodically, ensuring no vessel escaped while keeping civilians out of harm's way. On the planet below, Valaran soldiers cautiously emerged from shelters. They had fought bravely, but were now insignificant compared to the humans above. Lyran approached a group of young recruits, her voice trembling with excitement. "Watch them," she said. "Learn. See how they fight, survive, and protect. They are the standard we have never known." Meanwhile, Captain Marcus observed the system with a calm intensity. His fleet had eliminated the threat, but his mind was already calculating the next steps. "Scan for hidden threats," he commanded. "We leave nothing behind. Every possible danger must be neutralized before we withdraw." The Valarans could not help but notice the humans' efficiency. They did not celebrate. They did not boast. Every action was measured, precise, and purposeful. Even as the last invader ships were destroyed, the Deathworlders maintained defensive positions, ensuring no new threats emerged. A young Velaran, witnessing a human vessel deploy a gravity disruptor to crush an invader cruiser, whispered to her companion. They are unstoppable. We cannot even imagine surviving a battle without them. Lyran nodded solemnly. We survive because they are here. They turn hopelessness into victory. The invaders' remnants attempted one last attack, sending a stealth ship toward the Velaran capital. But a human scout detected it instantly. Within seconds, the stealth ship was surrounded, immobilized by an electromagnetic net, and captured. The Deathworlders had not only defeated the enemy, they had anticipated every possible move. High Counselor Cirella approached Lyran, her eyes filled with awe. These humans, they are not merely warriors. They are something greater. We asked for help, and they brought power beyond imagination. Lyran looked at the fleet above, her mind racing. They are not gods, they are human, but they survive where others would fail. They fight where others would flee. They are perfect in battle. Captain Marcus, observing the Velaran Council from orbit via secure communication, spoke calmly. We respond to calls for help. That is all. Their survival is their own. We merely provide the edge they need to endure. As the last of the invader ships were dealt with, the Velarans slowly began to rebuild their cities. They moved cautiously among the ruins, realizing that the humans had not only saved them, they had reshaped their understanding of the galaxy. The children stared at the orbiting fleet, wide-eyed. Will they stay? One asked. Lyran shook her head. No, they do not stay. They come. They fight. And then they leave. That is how humans work. They are here to help, not to rule. Yet even as the humans prepared to withdraw, the Velarans could not shake the feeling of awe and fear. These beings were unstoppable, unpredictable, and utterly alien in their approach to survival and combat. They were not just a fleet. They were a force of nature. Captain Marcus gave the final order to the fleet. Regroup. Prepare for warp. We depart once the system is secure. No civilian interference, minimal presence. Our job here is complete. As the human ships slowly formed their warp formation, the Velarans could see the precision and discipline in every movement. The Deathworlders left nothing to chance. The moment was brief, but it would be remembered forever. Lyran watched as the fleet vanished into warp space, leaving the Velaran system intact but forever changed. She turned to Elder Terran. They are gone, but the lesson remains. She said, survival, strength, and strategy. These humans embody it all. They arrived at our weakest hour and turned despair into hope. Elder Terran nodded solemnly. Yes, and we have witnessed something rare, a species that thrives where others fail. A force unlike anything in the galaxy. They are Deathworlders. The Velarans began to rebuild their homes, their hope renewed. But in their hearts they knew that the universe had changed. Humanity had arrived. And wherever humans went, survival and victory would follow. The first encounter was over, the invaders destroyed, and the Velarans saved. But the legend of the Deathworlders was only beginning. The galaxy would never forget the species that arrived in response to a simple SOS and brought chaos, strategy, and unstoppable power in their wake. The Velaran capital had quieted after the chaos of the battle. Fires smoldered in the distance, but the sky was no longer filled with streaks of energy or the screams of panicked citizens. The Deathworlder fleet remained in orbit, a silent wall of protection, but their presence was intimidating. Every Velaran in the city felt it, a mixture of awe, fear, and respect. Lyran walked through the streets with a group of Velaran scientists and leaders. Every building, every street told the story of destruction and survival. But now, for the first time, they could breathe. The humans had neutralized the invaders completely. High Counselor Cirella joined them, her eyes still wide from witnessing the battle. We survived, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, because of them. Lyran nodded. Yes, but surviving is not enough to describe it. They are unlike anything we've ever known. We asked for help, And they brought not mercy, but mastery. They turned the impossible into reality. From orbit, Captain Marcus Vey observed the Valaran planet below. His fleet had established a defensive perimeter, scanning the system for any hidden threats. Drones patrolled the skies, and small human shuttles moved between planets to ensure no invaders remained. The humans had not relaxed, even though the battle was over. Their discipline was absolute. "Captain," said Lieutenant Aaron, one of Marcus's officers, "the Valarans are attempting to communicate with us directly. They seem cautious, but they are sending representatives down to meet our teams." Marcus nodded. "Allow it, but maintain full security. We are here to help, not to be endangered by curiosity. Keep all weapon systems active. Let them learn, but carefully." Soon, Valaran representatives, including Lyran and Elder Terran, approached the humans' perimeter. Small shuttles hovered near the human ships, and automated defenses tracked them closely, but no fire was unleashed. The Valarans felt a mixture of relief and intimidation. The humans were calm, but their presence demanded respect. Lyran stepped forward, her voice steady but full of emotion. We do not know how to thank you. Our species, we would have been destroyed without you." A human officer, standing, tall and silent, spoke with calm authority. "You asked for help, we delivered, that is all. Survival is the priority, not gratitude." Lyran blinked. "But your fleet, your strategy, it is unlike anything we have ever imagined. You fight differently. You survive differently. We do not understand it fully." Captain Marcus finally stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "It is simple," he said. "Humans do not fear danger. We adapt. We endure. We face challenges directly, and we do not stop until we succeed. That is how we survive, and how we help others survive." Elder Terran's jaw dropped slightly. "You thrive in situations where others would perish. You do not hesitate. You are relentless." Marcus's voice was quiet but firm. "Relentless when it matters. Efficient when it counts. That is the human way." The Valarans looked around at the massive ships, their dark hulls glinting, under the twin suns. Each vessel seemed alive with power and purpose. Drones moved like swarms of insects. Weapon systems adjusted automatically, and the fleet operated as a single organism. Lyran turned to Elder Terran. "We asked for help, and received not diplomacy, not comfort, but power and precision. They are not just warriors, they are masters of survival." The humans allowed the Valarans to inspect a small section of their fleet. The aliens moved cautiously, eyes wide at the sight of advanced technology. Weapon systems that could destroy entire moons were carefully maintained. Gravity manipulators, energy projectors, and nanobot arrays filled the control rooms. Every system was designed for efficiency and survival, not display. A young Valaran, scientist whispered to Lyran, "It is incredible. They do not just fight. They control every element of the battlefield. Every possible danger is accounted for." Lyran nodded. "Yes, and yet they do not gloat. They act because it is necessary, not for glory. That is what makes them different." Captain Marcus walked beside the Valarans, observing their reactions. "Curiosity is natural," he said, "but understand this. Humans are not easily understood. We do not follow the rules of other species. We survive, we adapt, and we act decisively. That is our culture. That is why we can operate where others fail." Sorella's voice was trembling. "Your presence, your abilities, they are frightening yet comforting. We survived because of you. And yet, we have never felt so small, so insignificant." Marcus nodded. "You are not insignificant. You survived because you acted, because you sought help. You did not surrender. That is what allowed us to assist you. Any species that acts, that does not give up, can survive with guidance. That is the principle of the Deathworlder fleet. The Valarans spent hours exploring human ships and observing their operations. They watched humans coordinate without verbal commands, executing complex maneuvers with precision. They saw engineers repairing ships while drones continued patrols, and weapon systems remained active. Every action was purposeful. Every movement was calculated. Lyran whispered to Elder Terran, "They do not just survive in danger, they thrive. Chaos is their tool, not their enemy." Terran shook his head in awe. "It is almost unbelievable. They take what would destroy others and use it to their advantage. They are more than we imagined." Meanwhile, small groups of Valarans began to ask questions about human strategy. They wanted to learn, to understand how a species could operate with such efficiency and bravery. The humans answered cautiously but openly, sharing general principles of survival, adaptation, and tactical thinking. "You must always expect the unexpected," Lieutenant Aaron explained. "Do not rely on luck. Use every resource available. Adapt quickly. And never hesitate when action is required. That is the human way to survive extreme conditions." Lyran nodded, taking careful notes. We must study this. Our understanding of survival and combat is primitive compared to you," Marcus observed silently. "Study if you must, but remember, understanding is only part of it. Action is what counts. Knowledge without execution is useless." As the day passed, the Valarans slowly began to grasp the scale of human capabilities. These were not merely warriors. They were masters of the impossible. They could survive conditions that would destroy other species, plan strategies that seemed unthinkable, and act decisively in chaos. Sorella finally spoke again, her voice steady. "We asked for help and we received not only safety but a lesson in survival. You have shown us the power of a species that refuses to yield. We will never forget this day." Lyran added, "We have witnessed courage, intelligence, and adaptability, unlike anything in our history." "They are extraordinary," Marcus nodded, signaling that it was time for the fleet to prepare for departure. "Our presence here was temporary," he said. "The system is secure. Civilians are safe. We leave now, but remember what you have seen. Survival requires action, courage, and adaptability. That is the human way." The Valarans watched in awe as the Deathworlder fleet began to move into warp positions. The massive ships glimmered under the suns, their engines preparing for the jump. Every Velaran present felt a mixture of fear and gratitude. They had survived because of these humans, but they also knew that the species they had encountered was unlike anything else in the galaxy. Lyran whispered, "They will leave, but their presence, their lesson, will stay with us forever. We have witnessed humans at their fullest, and we have seen what survival truly means." Elder Terran looked up at the fleet. "They are gone, but we have learned. And one day, perhaps, we will understand fully what it means to be like them, to act decisively, fear nothing, and endure everything." The children of the capital stared at the disappearing fleet, imagining the power and courage they had witnessed. For them, humanity became a symbol of hope, resilience, and unimaginable strength. And as the Deathworlder fleet vanished into the stars, the Valarans felt a mix of relief, awe, and the beginning of understanding. Humans were not just saviors. They were an example of what it meant to survive, adapt, and dominate in the harshest conditions. The Valarans had asked for help. They had received not only protection, but a lesson in courage, intelligence, and the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to be defeated. For the first time in their history, the Valarans understood that some species could turn chaos into advantage, fear into strength, and helplessness into triumph. The humans, the Deathworlders, were that species. And in the silent, star-filled sky, the The legend of humanity's arrival in the Valaran system grew, destined to be remembered for generations. The Valaran system was quiet. The fires had mostly died out and the smoke of battle slowly faded into the sky. The cities, though damaged, were intact, and the survivors were beginning to move through the streets cautiously. It was a morning, unlike any other in Valaran history, a morning of both relief and awe. Lyran walked through the capital with Elder Terran, observing the citizens who were beginning to rebuild. Families had emerged from shelters, children played in areas once filled with rubble, and the elderly cautiously stepped outside, still uncertain of the world around them. Every Valaran was aware of the invisible presence still above them, the Deathworlder fleet lingering in orbit, maintaining a protective perimeter. "They are still here," Lyran whispered. "Even though the battle is over, they do not leave us unguarded. Their presence, it is both frightening and comforting." Elder Terran nodded. "They have shown us what it means to survive. Not just fight, not just endure, but to dominate chaos itself. We have learned more about strength today than we have in thousands of years." Far above the planet, Captain Marcus Vey observed the Valaran cities from the bridge of the Indomitable. His fleet was ready for departure, but he wanted to ensure that the Valarans were safe before leaving entirely. Every remaining threat had been neutralized, but caution was ingrained in human operations. Lieutenant Aron approached Marcus. "Sir, the Valarans are attempting more direct communication. They want to meet with you personally before we depart." Marcus considered this. He did not usually engage in ceremonial meetings with alien species, but he understood the importance of the gesture. "Allow it," he said, "but maintain defensive readiness. No surprises. Keep all systems active." Soon, a shuttle approached the Indomitable, carrying Sorella, Lyran, and Elder Terran. The Valarans marveled at the human ship as it docked. Its interior was both functional and precise. Clean lines, efficient layout, and systems that seemed to operate automatically. Every display and control panel was in perfect order, every engineer and officer at their post without unnecessary movement. High Counselor Sorella bowed slightly in respect. "Captain Marcus, we cannot express enough gratitude. Your fleet, your strategy, it saved our species. Words are insufficient." Marcus nodded, calm and measured. "We respond to calls for help. That is all. Survival is what matters. Your species acted by asking for help. That gave us the opportunity to assist. Courage and initiative are as important as power." Lyran stepped forward, her voice shaking with awe. "Your fleet, your people, they are unlike anything we have ever encountered. You do not just fight. You anticipate, adapt, and dominate. The invaders did not stand a chance." Marcus's eyes were steady, calm. "We act because it is necessary. Fear does not guide our decisions. We use every advantage. We plan, adapt, and strike decisively. That is the human approach to survival. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because it works." Elder Terran's voice was quiet but filled with wonder. "Your people, your species, you thrive in conditions that would destroy others. You turn despair into victory. We have never seen anything like it." Marcus allowed a faint smile. "That is what humans do. We survive where others fail. We endure where others break. And when we act completely." The Valarans moved through the ship, observing the human crew at work. They watched engineers, adjusting complex systems without a word, drones coordinating attacks autonomously, and officers monitoring multiple battle zones at once. The humans worked together as a single organism, every action purposeful, every decision precise. Lyran whispered to Sorella, "They are not merely warriors. They are survivors, engineers and strategists all at once. Chaos is their environment, and they thrive in it." Sorella nodded, her eyes wide. "We survived because of them. And now, we understand what survival truly means." The Valarans asked questions about human strategy, tactics, and philosophy. Humans answered cautiously, but openly, sharing the principles behind their actions. You must always expect the unexpected, Lieutenant Aaron explained. Do not rely on luck. Use every resource available, adapt quickly, and never hesitate when action is required. That is the human way to survive extreme conditions. Lyran carefully noted every detail. We must study this. Our understanding of warfare and survival is limited compared to what we have witnessed, Marcus observed silently. Knowledge without action is useless. You may understand, but only practice and courage will make it real. Learning from observation is the first step, but only action counts. After hours of discussion and observation, the Velerans understood that these humans were not gods or invincible beings. They were something more dangerous in a way. A species that could think, adapt, and endure beyond normal limits. They had not hesitated to act, they had not feared the impossible, and they had never wavered in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, Marcus gave the order for the fleet to depart. The system is secure. Civilians are safe. Our presence is no longer required. Prepare for warp jump. The Velerans watched as the massive human ships began to move into formation. Engines flared, weapons systems hummed quietly, and the fleet aligned perfectly for warp. Even in leaving, the humans displayed discipline, precision, and control. Lyran whispered, "They will leave, but their lesson will remain. They have shown us courage, intelligence, and strength beyond imagination." The galaxy has changed, Elder Terran nodded. We have witnessed something rare, a species that survives and thrives where others would perish. Their presence will be remembered forever. The children of the city watched the fleet disappear into warp, eyes wide with awe. For them, humanity became a symbol of hope, strength, and survival. Sorella turned to Lyran. We have survived, but now we must share this story. The galaxy must know that humans exist, not merely as warriors, but as survivors, masters of strategy, and protectors in times of need. Lyran nodded. Yes, our civilization is forever changed. We saw humans in action, and we learned what it means to endure, to adapt, and to act decisively. Their legend will spread across the stars. Captain Marcus, observing the Velaran system one last time, issued the final command. Warp jump in 3, 2, 1. With that, the Deathworlder fleet vanished into the stars. Silence returned to the Velaran skies. The threat of invaders was gone. The system was safe. The survivors were free. And yet the memory of what had arrived lingered. Humans were not just allies. They were a force the galaxy had never fully known. A species that arrived in response to a simple SOS and reshaped the fate of an entire civilization. Lyran stood at the edge of the central dome, staring at the space where the fleet had disappeared. We asked for help, she said softly, and they came. Not with comfort, but with power, strategy, and survival. We are alive because of them, and we will never forget it. Elder Terran placed a hand on her shoulder. The galaxy will never forget it either. Stories of the Deathworlders will spread to every system. Our people will tell them for generations, and other civilizations will learn the truth. Humans are not to be underestimated. They survive where others fail. They endure where others perish. They act where others hesitate. The Velarans began to rebuild their cities, stronger and wiser than before. Their engineers incorporated lessons from human technology. Their military strategists studied human tactics, and their people carried a new understanding of courage, endurance, and ingenuity. From that day on, the SOS that had been sent to the wrong species became a legend in Velaran culture. Not only had humans arrived, but they had done so in a way that changed the Velarans' perception of what was possible. Humans were no longer a distant species. They were an example of survival, strength, and the unstoppable spirit of life itself. And in the stars beyond the Velaran system, somewhere, among the countless worlds, the legend of humanity, the Deathworlders, grew. a species who answered a call for help with power, precision, and an unyielding will to endure. A species that no one would ever forget. The SOS had reached the wrong species, but for the Valarans, that mistake had become the greatest fortune of their history. Humanity had arrived, they had fought, they had survived, and they had left a mark on the galaxy that would echo forever. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. When humans respond, survival is inevitable, hope is restored, and nothing, not even chaos, can stop them. The Valarans looked to the stars, knowing that humanity's shadow would loom over the galaxy for generations, and in that knowledge they felt both fear and admiration. Humans had arrived, and the universe would never be the same again.